Right now, at the time of recording this, my agency manages spend for 5 8-figure brands at a time. We're a boutique agency, but we have 5 brands in the 8-figure range, and we're trying to get them to sort of the mid 8-figure, even towards 9 figures in business across all their channels. And I am focusing right now on my creative process to create more winners, not only the kinds of winning ads that got us from, in a lot of cases, 1 or 2 million up to 10 million or so, but actually what we think is going to help us get to the next level as well. I'm going to walk you through my exact creative process for those kinds of mid-sized brands so that you can know how we're targeting new angle creation. I'm going to show you exactly the media buying setup, like all the way down to the Facebook ad setup of how we launch new creative, how we think about finding new angles, and then how we iterate on winners to create more ads that work once we've found angles that are working with our customers with as much detail as I possibly can. This is the process we're actually using at AJF Growth. We're trying to tighten up with our clients right now. I think it'll be some help to you. All right, I think about right now creative in a couple of different ways. Really kind of 2 main pathways for the creative that we're making for brands. And I alluded to it in the intro, but there's 2 things you have to do separately. And one of them is find new winning ads. Okay. And the other is once you find winners, create more winners, just like that, right? And I've been thinking about a framework for both of those things and starting to think about them pretty differently in how we do it. I think if I've made a mistake in the past, it's been that I'm constantly in find new winners mode. And that has led me at times to go try to create ads across without paying enough attention to the stuff that we've done that's actually working. And actually sometimes by taking shots in the dark. It's probably more process than that, but by just trying my best to take shots. But I think instead there is a process we can use to think about starting with angle and messaging, and then finding a clear way to test angle and messaging that is extremely low cost, and that is also going to be very high upside by finding new angles. And that's really the key with new angles. So let's actually start there, okay? So here's what we are going to do for finding new angles. And I should say, by angle, I mean something really specific. I mean the overlap of the customer's desires and a particular benefit of the product that you're selling, okay? So so much of what makes meta ad and really any advertising, especially performance advertising, successful is finding angles that perform and then messaging those angles in a way that's compelling and interesting, gets attention and drives value for the customer, okay? So you have to find those winning angles, and that starts from all of the usual ways that starts, right? Reading reviews, reading comments on your ads might help you. Going and looking at competitors and seeing what they're saying. Check out their ad libraries, see if you can learn anything from what's going on there. Really to try to understand what angles people are talking about in your space. Really trying to hear customers express their self-interest. I'm not going to go too deep into this right now because I did an episode recently that if you want to hear me talk more about how I think about finding angles, I did an episode called The Surprising Creative Strategy That Powers Meta Ads to Scale. I'll try and get a link in the show notes here. But the basic concept is customers and all people all the time, in fact, are self-interested to the core. Every action we take is self-interested, and great advertising does a great job of showing how the value of the product you create ties in clear ways to self-interest. So that often starts with recognizing what the desire is of the customer, thinking through what do they really want? What can you understand that they really want that your product can meet, okay? And then from there, to figure out a way to say that in a compelling way, okay? And so there's some usual tricks, etc., that you can think of when you do that, right? So when you write hooks, for example, you want to write hooks that generate either curiosity, fear, or desire. Those are like the classic things that grab people's attention and so on. And so you think about how to tap into that, okay? And those are all kind of the big picture rules. But where I want to actually go more and where I want to think about a little bit more is a little bit more of a clear process for developing certain kind of ads in certain ways that do this. Because this is the kind of research you're probably doing all the time, I'm doing all the time. I'm thinking about, okay, I've got a customer launch a new product, or I have a new client that's not performing well, or whatever it is. And so how do I find what angles are working? Maybe a brand is stalled out. They just can't get outside of any one winning ad and can't find anything else. So what else can we find that works here, okay? And so I have started to think about this with a really clear framework for what kinds of ads we are going to launch, with the goal of testing new angles as efficiently as possible. And by efficiently, what I mean is I want to test as many angles as possible because I believe it is messaging first and foremost that creates value. in the long run, there's all kinds of different formats and styles and UGC and CGC and, really well-designed, beautiful stuff mixed with more socially native stuff, ugly type stuff, all kinds of different formats and styles and, again, approaches to messaging angles that work. But the first and hardest thing to do is find messaging that resonates and then execute it clearly, okay? And so that's what we believe is challenge number one. And if that's correct, then my goal has to be in my media buying process and in my ad creation process to surface angles that we think are winning. And so I have started to use what we are internally calling like the 3x3x3 approach. Okay. I know there's a thing out there called 322. I don't even know what 322 is. I just know it's a thing that gets referenced. 3x3x3 has nothing to do with that. It's just a simple way of categorizing how many ads we are launching. But the simple idea is this, is that I'm going to find 3 new angles, okay, that I'm going to start with for any time I'm working on a new product. Okay. So let's just say a customer comes with, I always think of skincare here because I used to run a skincare brand, right? Let's just call it a new moisturizer. I want to think about 3 different angles for that moisturizer. And then when I launch, what I do is, what we are doing is creating 3, what we call socially native stills. I'm gonna show you an example of that in a second. And 3 VO only explainer videos, okay? And I'm gonna tell you what I mean by that in a second as well. So that's the basic idea. So 3 angles, 3 socially native stills, 3 VO only explainer videos. And I'm going to show you how this is going to end up looking, okay, in an actual ad account, or at least the outline of how the ad setup will be. So I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see, we'll get it on here. So this is the way the setup is going to be at the actual media buying level. Okay, at the top level, we're going to have our Evergreen CBO campaign. And the notion of the Evergreen CBO campaign is just, it's separated by product is typically how I do this. This is the master campaign. It is bid capped or set with a target ROAS goal. In my cases, maybe a cost cap depending on the setup. But this is going to be BAU, so it's not ASC, okay, with different ad sets all set separately. And each ad set is going to represent its own angle within that. And one of the clear things I would not want to say right now is that this is not a creative testing campaign. This is the same campaign that I'm launching all my winners are in, okay? All my winners are in this campaign as well. So I am not doing a separate testing campaign. And when I set my bid caps in this campaign or my target ROAS targets, they are going to be the exact same targets as I would have for any of my past winners. Because if you know me, you know I hate creative testing campaigns. I think they're a giant waste of money. And so we're going to launch new creative into these past performing campaigns. And we're going to force rank them against other creative on the same product, okay? And that's going to be, we're going to let Meta sort out whether or not these ads spend and how much they spend. So this is the same Evergreen campaign that I've got before. So I hope that's really clear. That's how we launch new creative. There's no point to creative testing campaign. Just Google or look on YouTube, Andrew Ferris Creative Testing. You will find why I think that, okay? It's the biggest waste of money in many, many businesses that I know of. Okay, so there's that. Within that, I would launch these 3 additional ad sets. Now, these would be new ad sets on top of all the other ad sets that are live there. Again, I'm not turning off any ad sets, okay? And each ad set would have 6 ads. Now, in these cases, there may be a 7th ad. There may only be 5. Like, don't hold too much to this. There's no magic to the idea of this 3x3x3 idea, all right? But so the idea here, though, is just a way to constrain my freedom in testing a little bit. I want to make it so that I don't go crazy testing one idea, put a whole bunch of time and effort into one angle if I'm not sure it's going to work. And I want to, again, generate creative that I can generate fast and cheap while at the same time testing messaging in an effective way, okay? And I think these 2 ad formats help me to do exactly that. And this is the key idea. By leaning on these 2 ad formats, I can test my messages, my angle, with as much clarity and as much simplicity as possible. Okay, so each ad set is separated by angle. Again, it has a bid cap or a target ROAS target. And I'm doing 3 social native stills for that angle and 3 VO only midform explainer. And that's actually there's a reason specifically that I want that, okay? And I'm going to tell you that in a second. I said it in this episode, but I do all of this with my team from behind the scenes studio, a Philippines-based design and video edit studio. They work with brands, they work with agencies as extensions of your team. They started by being an offshoot of More Staffing, the staffing agency I've worked with for a long time, promoted on the show for a long time, and then started to build up as they saw what was happening actually at AJF Growth. So if you like the way that I think about creative and about design and about edit, thinking about how to do a good job, but also to think carefully or think well about how to generate at scale, to generate high volume of ads with a low cost per ad. At the same time, make sure it's high quality. Like, go check out Behind the Scenes Studio. It's a really good, cost-effective way, also scalable way to extend your creative team with really high quality designers and video editors based in the Philippines. You get great people working with you. I really trust and appreciate them. I've added team members throughout for a long time from Behind the Scenes Studio. I'm gonna go spend some time with them very soon. Like, they're really awesome. So if you are an operator or if you are an agency who's thinking about how to extend your creative team to do this exact kind of meta ads creative work, and you want designers and editors to do a great job, but who are based in the Philippines, go check out Behind the Scenes Studio right now. You can do that at btsstudio.co, btsstudio.co. The link is in the show notes for that. Go check them out. Okay, so here's the Socially Native still. This is just one simple example from Natural Dog Co. I think this ad has spent, I don't really remember, but the basic idea here is clear product imagery, because we're going for clarity first and foremost, with a clear message with a clear angle. So in this case, the angle would be this supplement is better than prescription medication that is only focusing on the symptoms. So ditch the expensive prescription meds, deal with the actual cause of skin and coat issues. So this would be for a dog with skin and coat issues, specifically talking to customers who are using prescription meds to deal with their dog's skin and coat issues. And so you see, like, I can create this ad extremely fast, and and I can create 3 versions of this extremely fast as well. I can move the copy, I can change the image, I can change the copy, but probably I'm going to keep this basic format, and I'll make my variations here one of 2 ways. One possible way is that I will keep the same copy and do 3 different images if I'm really confident in my messaging here, but really want to test some different images. I might do that. Option 2 would be to keep the image and vary the copy. And so then I could change this a little bit. Maybe I change the word expensive prescription to calling out the specific name of the prescription med that I want to use. Or maybe I rephrase this completely, but have the same basic message, okay, that kind of thing. Okay, and the goal here is keep it fast and easy. What I want you to see is how cheap it is to generate this creative. And I now am at a point with my creative team where when I say socially native still, they know exactly what I have in mind. We can generate a ton of these extremely fast. We have a copy generation process, an image generation process to where they look like this. And socially native just means, you've seen something like this Instagram copy treatment a million times. So it doesn't require somebody to sit and think through careful, beautiful design. All you're doing is saying, like, this will play on social media because that's the format for it, and allows you to do that. You might use UGC instead of a staged photo like this. Who knows? But that's the basic idea. Okay, so that's what the social native still is. You can do 3 of those fast. If you come back to this chart, what you'll see is what I go and do is take this same idea, but for each angle. Okay, so again, I can do that really fast and think carefully about the words that I'm putting on the screen, on the image, and go really, really fast and really cheap. And that allows me to test at scale. Okay. Sometimes you'll launch these and they'll just win. They just will win, and they'll spend a whole bunch of money because the message is clear enough, the product is good enough, the margin is good enough, the target's right, the offer's right, all those things, and you're just good to go. Okay. So that can actually get you really, really far. I have an ad like this for one client that has spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It happens. In fact, I have multiple ads that have done that. Okay. The second idea here is the VO only, it says midterm, should say midform explainer on this sheet, doesn't matter. Midform explainer. Okay. Now, this video, I don't have an example of it here for you, but I just want you to think of the explainer format, okay, where instead of, again, doing some really tricky sort of staged actor, creator script, that kind of thing, it is a person talking to the camera. Is the idea. And it's just somebody walking through an idea. And this is the simple format I use. Again, I've put out content about this before, about how much I love long form explainers. I usually reference the long form. In this case, I'm talking about the mid form, again, because it's fast and it's easy, and it's cheap to make. And so it allows me to move quickly and test ideas quickly. And I organize the content of an explainer like this: a hook, the body or education section, okay, the validation and guarantee, the offer and CTA. Depending on how much information I have in there, I may not have a validation and guarantee section, the body may be really short, like, whatever. The length here doesn't matter that much. I say 15 to 45 seconds. Again, there's no magic to that. If you can get it done in 10 seconds, great. If it takes you a minute 10, but it can still work quickly and you can get it done quick, fine. That's fine. But you get the idea, right? You don't have to kill yourself to make a 15-minute video. You also don't have to kill yourself to make it the snappiest, most tightly edited thing you've ever seen. The point here is just get the information across in a way that's clear. So to take the example I used earlier from the social native still, if I wanted to do this same thing, I might actually take this exact same copy, ditch the expensive prescription meds, deal with the actual cause, and turn that into the hook. And so I might say something like, prescription skin medication for dogs only deals with the symptoms. If your dog has redness and itching, it needs to deal with the causes. Okay. And that's what the supplement does, whatever, something like that. Okay. And now I'm going to go explain why that's the case, validate it, give the offer, and go from there. Okay. Now here's the key with this idea. I'm product focused. I'm really direct. I'm really clear. And there's all kinds of better and more interesting and compelling ways to say this in the long term. But in the short term, once again, it allows me to do a very sort of classic explainer format for a product to say why it's good to somebody. This especially plays in some category. And then what I can also do here is use either I can get behind the mic and I can record just with my podcast mic here and record the video myself. It would take me very little time to go do. Or I can use an AI tool like 11 Labs or something like that, plus captions on screen. And I can get a voiceover, but I don't have to get somebody looking at the screen and recording a video, because I'm not gonna cut between a talking head and product. I'm just going to be focused on product and B-roll, and that's it. And it's just going to be voiceover with caption on screen. Now, the thing about that, again, is that it's fast and it's cheap and it's easy to make. And that's really important because, again, I want to take as many shots as I can, test as many ideas as I can. And again, many of these will perform very, very well. That this sort of format that you've seen a lot of times, especially for problem solution type products, really can work great. This simple explainer like this really can work awesome. You can spend, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads like this that can work awesome. And then later on, and I'm going to get to this in a second, you can expand your output against that message, but it allows you to test the message extremely, extremely cheap. I use my team in the Philippines that I use with Behind the Scenes Studio, who builds these out. I have an ad read for them in this episode. So if you want to hear more about who they are and what they understand about this format, it's great. But they now are dialed in, just like with the social native still, to what I want when I ask for this. And so they can then go and organize B-roll and organize all the material to move extremely quickly on this. I just have to provide them with the audio that they need, which again, I can do via my own VO or something like an AI tool. And so once again, you can do that for 3 new angles for new ad really fast. By the way, if the editing on the Midform Explainer is going to get in your way, if you don't have an editor, I have another solution for you. Pick up the camera and shoot it yourself. Take the same idea, get yourself explaining. You can literally do this with no edits. Just have the product nearby so you can show it when you need to. But once again, we use this all the time. We call this the sort of like socially native explainer or the quick explainer, where this is like no edits, just a talking head talking to the camera, and it's only a talking head. Set up your camera in a way that makes it decent quality video and audio. It doesn't have to be great. Set up your phone, do this, and shoot this yourself. And create 3 or 4 versions of it. It will not take you that long, especially if it's scripted. Get a teleprompter app, do it yourself, and you can do this again extremely fast, extremely cheap, and you can use this to test new angles. If you have a creator on hand, somebody on your team who can do it, great. But that's another easy thing to do. And so by doing that, you can start to try new angles in different ways. You can imagine with the product that I mentioned earlier here from Natural Dog Co., that you could frame this a lot of different ways, right? This is very much specifically framed against or focused on this angle of this product, not that product. Okay, it's a comparison ad. Okay? But you could also do this with like a before and after type of approach to this. My dog had redness and itches and was shedding in these terrible ways, and now it doesn't because of this product, right? So it has nothing to do with any other product or solution in the market. It's just this. You can find a lot of different ways to do this. But that's what I mean by thinking about different angles for this, right? Is that now you can take the same ad format, change the angles, and rip out really quickly these different styles. Okay, so that's the idea of how I'm going to do the setup for new ads. Now, we do something like that and have done something like that for a while at AJF Growth, but increasingly what we are going to do is make that SOP for every new angle that we create. And it'll look and feel slightly different for different brands depending on their brand standards. Of course, different brands are going to have different things like that they're going to need to do. And so this is the kind of process that ought to provide guardrails without at the same time being too restrictive, right? You can tweak this to get the idea. The principle in play is test new angles widely and broadly and test them in a way that is cheap and efficient as a way to open up new possibilities. And then from there, there's two next steps. And that's what I'm going to walk through next. Okay. So step 2 is getting really good data feedback loops. Now, this is where you are going to be really helped if you are running manual bids. Okay. And that is because you do not have to go sorting through a dashboard to figure out what the return is on any given ad or whatever. You can do a simple thing. If you set up your ad account the same way that I do, all right, and that is campaigns set out by product or by offer if it's like a bundle or something like that. That's basically a product. Okay. Campaigns separated by product, and then at the ad set level, mostly separated by angle. Okay, you can really quickly, I mean, even if you don't, right, you can just go sort your entire ad account by amount spent, or you can go into one campaign, one product at a time, and look at amount spent total, again, for all your ads for that one product. And if you do that, okay, you are going to see very quickly which ads have spent the most money recently. And if you have that categorized, especially if you're downstream from this approach at some point, as like, okay, here's the message or here's the angle that has worked so far, now you can go and think, what more ads can I create to take this message and find new ways that are compelling and interesting to say it for more people. I'm gonna talk more about that in a second. There are all kinds of tools out there for creative analysis, looking at all these different elements of it. And I come back to my episode of Jess Bachman that I did a while ago all the time. Jess is going to come back soon. He is awesome. He does great work. He has a whole iterative creative process that I think is great. It's just not the process that I've mastered. And I think it's harder to master than people think. And so there are ways to do this, but, sort of digging into deeper down details of the ad account than what I tend to look at. All I'm saying here is look at what ads have spent the most money, especially if you're running manual bids. Spend is by far the leading indicator of performance. So if you just sort your account by amount spent, you don't need a third-party tool to go figure out like what ads are performing. You don't need creative reporting on those kinds of things. Neither does your client if you're an agency person or a media buyer. Just like a lot of tools that I've seen like this are just basically rebuilds of the meta dashboard, so far as I can tell. Just go in there, sort by amount spent, and you can see exactly where the money is going and how it's working. And if an angle is starting to spend a lot of money, then you can do that. Now, it's possible that an ad is spending a bunch of money and you're actually not sure what the quote unquote angle is that is doing this. And you can take that and because maybe it says a few different things or sort of a customer rambling about a few different things. And you've seen videos like that where people go all over the place and you're like, well, I don't know what sold them. Was it the first thing they said or the second thing they said, or maybe they're just a compelling hook or like, I don't know, right? Whatever the answer is, okay, you could test that with the same process, right? Just go and say like, okay, if I haven't made this kind of ad yet, but I have a piece of UGC that's performed great, I'm going to test what I think the angles are here. And I'm going to try angle A and angle B as far as I can tell and see if I can get more spend against that angle because that's the way you scale that up, right? But a lot of times you are going to know what the angle is, again, especially if you're downstream from this. Let's say you launch ads in the format that I just laid out. Now, let's say ad set 1, angle 1 is the one that spends the most money. If that happens, now you have some steps to go next. So all you have to do to see your winners, you don't have to go set up complicated dashboards, is just sort by amount spent on those angles, okay? Once you do that, now you have some feedback. And as you start to get that feedback, okay, now you want to go and expand the outcome. Now, I'm not going to walk through my entire process here, and there's a really specific reason for that. It's because I've already done that on another episode that you can go check out and listen to. And as I'm doing this process, by the way, I'm going to keep coming back to it where I get better refinement and better process unlocks and find more of those things. So you should subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to this if you want to stay up with ways that I'm doing this. Like I said, I've got Jess Bachman coming back soon. It's one of my more popular episodes ever when I had him before to talk more about this kind of stuff. It's something I'm thinking about a ton going forward. So I think if you like this, if you've made it this far, you should subscribe. You're going to like a lot of what's going to come after this as well. Okay, so the episode you should go to in the past is called How I Turn One Idea into 300 Ads. And it's basically this portion of this next, okay? The expansion of the process. And I actually shared in that episode an actual Notion link with some format styles and all of these sort of sub styles, sub formats within larger formats that I use. And that's like the next step for me is you take the angle and then you press into it by making a bunch more creative like that. So let's say some ad starts taking up 50% of your total spend. It's like, okay, great. How do I make more ads communicating that same angle? And that's all you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about iterating creative. It's that simple. You just go from there, okay? And you go take that one idea and you push harder on it. Now, the thing I will say about this here is that you can actually take a couple of these formats that we just did and push those farther as well. You could do more socially native stills. You can also go and think about like different imagery and test 5 different images with 5 different headlines now or something like that for those socially native stills. You can also go do design stills, where you actually now go take some of this messaging that has worked and give it a real overhaul in the design. You can get really creative here, and that can be the next step. Find some formats that you're good at, that you think play well, that work for you. If you're the kind of person who's great at picking up the camera and talking into it, fantastic. That's your angle expansion format. Go do more of it, right? Or if you have a bunch of team members who can do the same thing, fantastic. That's your angle expansion. Lock in those things. I suggested some in that other episode. I've told you a few things that I think work really consistently, but you can expand from there. And that process is all you need to do to rinse and repeat for a long time. And in fact, I would even say that process is basically what you scale all of your creative output against, because it doesn't stop with just the one idea into 300 ads episode that I laid out for my formats, okay? So I told you what formats we do next at AJF Growth, and I'm convinced we're really good at a few particular ad formats that we make really well all the time, and I'm certainly thinking about how we expand the types of ads that we make and sort of keep sort of mastering new creative horizons with what's possible for us. There's I think about different people who show different stuff here, right? I think about Social Savannah and her ads. When I see those, a lot of those have these, really slick little edits that are really creative and catchy. And she's just great at that. Her team is just great at that kind of stuff. And so she should make more of that, right? And maybe my team will look at some of those and say like, okay, how can we work in those things? Somebody reaches into the computer screen and grabs something out of it and it becomes real or whatever. There's all of these little flashy little quick things. That's great. Okay. I see some people who are just great graphic designers who make really awesome, beautiful stuff, or they've invested in extremely beautiful photography of their stuff. And they do a great job of pulling that into excellent design work that really ties a brand together, maybe more apparel type brands or, decor or, sort of those kinds of goods where you really want to show it looking beautiful. Maybe that's something that you have uniquely in your skill set. Or maybe you just have a huge roster of UGC creators that can do this. There's a bunch of different things that are most available to you, but you take those angles that work with those products that work and you scale those up. And that's the idea. Okay. So what I want to do, so go check that episode out, How I Turn One Idea into 300 Ads. I think that will help you think about this part of the process a little bit more. My first client added FERMAT for landing pages and funnels post-click after the ad. We saw our spend increase by about 50% almost right away. I have come to love and appreciate FERMAT so much. I'm exploring using them for other clients all the time because they are simply the best, most robust, best built funnel building software of which I'm aware. That means landing pages, but not just landing pages, enhanced PDPs, so you can spin out PDPs that maintain consistent messaging like I'm talking about in this episode, from ad through landing page through PDP. You can even do custom cart upsells relative to specific messages and offers. It's just really awesome, and it comes with an agency style service where you've got a managed service with it. There's just amazing stuff happening all the time here, including built-in AI tools that are going to make it easier for you to develop more copy. Really, really slick. There's offer testing. All the A/B testing is right there in platform. It's also the fastest loading software I've ever seen. The simple way of thinking about it is that if you are serious about messaging with specific messages to specific customers at scale, performance marketing done that classic way, FERMAT is simply the most robust, best performing landing page software in existence. You should go check them out now. FERMATcommerce.com/AF. FERMATcommerce.com/AF. Links in the show notes. Go check it out. But I actually want to take a step further here while we're talking about it, which is, okay, what can we do once we have those angles to then go even further to make it better, okay? And I think of a couple things that we are starting to invest in more and more and build more process around, and probably I'll have follow-up episodes about these, okay? Then the first is landing pages and offers. This is something since I started working with FERMAT, particularly for one client, where we're getting a lot better all the time at being able to quickly and easily edit offers and landing page content and upsells and like all of these things that that make it a lot easier for us to take ads that are already working and think about how to take a message and message it all the way through the funnel as clearly as possible. Because if you have an angle that's working, you are talking to a specific customer and their specific desires. That's the whole idea of an angle, like I said. So how, on the back end of the ad, do you make sure that you keep talking to that customer and keep messaging them as clearly as possible? And think about, maybe there's a specific offer for the person who's really concerned about using the skin and coat supplement that I mentioned earlier from Natural Dog Co., right? To take that example further, who maybe there's a specific offer for that customer if they're comparing it to their prescription meds that's really different than somebody who is just doing a straight up before and after, and who's thinking more in terms of pure problem solution. I don't know, the lander might be different. The things you say next, they might be different. So extending this same mentality down to the level of landing page, et cetera, is good. And this is why I started working with FERMAT, and why I've mentioned that before, why they are also in this episode with an ad read, is because I think that they have made this the easiest and fastest of anybody available. Like, it's just the software makes it so much faster and easier to do this than anybody else that I know of. Okay, so that's why. So yeah, landing pages, offer development, those kinds of things, I think go really far here. Offers sometimes are the biggest needle mover there is. So that can be a really huge unlock to take this process and extend it even more. Okay. Another one is CGC. This is an underrated thing because it is so cheap to do at so much scale. CGC is customer generated content. Have a post-purchase flow, or work with my friends at Bonafidio. Okay, I don't have a deal with Bonafidio, but I've done that. They're an earlier stage software company that may even still be in beta. I'm not sure, but Bonafidio, and I'll put that link in the show notes for them so you can check it out and see if it's a fit for you. It's just post-purchase customer video and image collection. And you can even think about seeding customers with what you want them to talk about specifically when they get your ads. But you can often get ads from customers that in exchange for some free product or something like that, that really work and also help you surface more angles like this. So again, it's a way to sort of extend the output that you're doing. It's also, I think, a great place for influencer seeding to go in even more. And again, I don't think you should be like briefing influencers too aggressively with like exactly what you want them to say. In most cases, I would think about that as a creator bucket, not an influencer bucket. But I would go and say, okay, with influencers, could you just sort of seed them basically one idea? Hey, I want you, once they like your product, you say, the thing that we've found most people resonate with is how this compares to other products in its space. If you have that experience, I would love to hear you talk about that with your people, okay? Something like that. Or you'll just notice that influencers will say those things and they'll fit angles you've said before. You got to categorize them that same way, all right? So that's another way. You could sort of nudge prime influencers that you're working with, that you're seeding to do that same kind of thing. Creators, like I mentioned a second ago, can be another way to do this. Creators will give you very different kinds of content in general from one another. They'll even sometimes pre-include some of their own edits, right? A lot of times they're packaging the content themselves. This is where you may be scripting them more, or you may be giving them a clearer brief where they're not really an influencer. The point is not so much that they have like influence, quote unquote. It's just that they are sort of actors on your behalf that maybe do some ad-libbing, some script reading. But again, they'll give you different kinds of stuff. They'll approach it in slightly different ways with slightly different language. They'll look and feel a little different. Ages will change. You'll have males versus females, like all those things. Again, it allows you to do the same thing. Use some of them to scale up new angles that are already working for you with sort of testimonial style content, et cetera. Okay. And this is also where I think other creative agencies is a really good idea. We do this certainly with some of our clients, where we've worked with other creative agencies to say, like, we just want to add creative firepower. And here's the angles that we think are working for our customers. Go make stuff like this. I mentioned Jess Bachman and Fire Team earlier. Like, we're doing that with Jess and a couple of other folks because they make extremely different kinds of creative than what I tend to make and what AJF Growth tends to make. And that I take as a real big win. There's not necessarily one right way here. Like, there's different kinds of creative will speak to different people. One of the principles underneath all of this, of course, is that creative variation is part of how you generate a whole bunch of value and how you grow and scale an ad account, because you can speak to, with, again, the same angle, different people, right? Perhaps, for example, one piece of creative performs differently with a 35-year-old female on Instagram versus even a 45-year-old female on Facebook. It may just hit them a little bit differently in some way for whatever reason, or maybe there's a regional consideration. They both have the same concern, but for whatever reason, people just have different preferences in different ways, but they still both might have value or might be able to get value from your product. And so creative variation is the way you reach them, still versus video, all those things. And so expanding out your creative output is the way to do this. Generally, a bad time to pull a creative agency in is when everything is going poorly and you need somebody to fix it. You're not looking for a magician. You're looking for extension of things that work from people who are really good at executing those kinds of things, in my experience. And so that's another way you can do this. So you take my one idea into 300 ads principle, you start doing that, and then something like it, right? Your version of that same process. Again, I walk you all the way through that. And then you expand it out with these other channels beyond even those first things that I'm saying. And that allows you to create a whole bunch of creative against that. And now you've gone from angle testing those angles all the way through massive creative output. Okay. And of course, something I'm working on getting better at in the near future, something that you probably should figure out as well, is how to leverage AI whenever possible here. There's a bunch of different places in this process where there are kinks or where there's friction. And if you can find ways to unkink the kinks with AI or to ease the friction with AI, go for it, right? There's a bunch of different ways to do this. I've got some clients who have tested some things like this and who've built their own internal processes. We're embracing it more and more and finding ways to use it. But it needs to fit with the best use of AI, in my experience, is when it fits into something that you think is strategically sound first and foremost, as opposed to just using AI as a way to throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, basically. There's a different kind of mentality about how to use the tool in that case. One of them is looking for magic. One of them is looking for leverage. And I think you want to look for leverage, not magic, when you're using AI. Find ways to do that. All right. So that's the whole process from start to finish. It's what we're working on most aggressively right now. I'm recording this episode at the end of 2024. It's going to go through 2025. This is where I'm putting a bunch of my focus with me and with my team, with my clients. We're trying to scale it up as much as we can. We've seen some early wins doing it this way right away, and we expect to see a whole bunch more. Hey, thanks so much for watching or listening. I hope this was helpful to you. Do follow up with Behind the Scenes Studio and FERMAT. The link is in the show notes for both of those. I've got all kinds of great episodes coming up very soon, and I think you would love to check them out. So subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss those. You can also reach out to me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, or go to ajfgrowth.com for everything I'm doing. I would really love to hear from you, really about any of it. If you think I'm an idiot, please email me. Tell me, hey, Andrew, you're an idiot. I would love to know that. And tell me why. Tell me why you think I'm an idiot. Anything like that is great. I would also love any feedback about any of the episodes you've seen from me before. What do you want to hear more of? Do you have questions, anything like that? It's all helpful. Thanks again so much for watching and listening. I'll see you next time.